Hi, folks. Welcome to History 101, the second half of world history. If you have signed up for History 101, I guess the CRN is 01662, and you've signed up with an instructor whose name seems to have every letter of the alphabet in it. Deb Chowdhury, that is me. You are in the right class. And yes, if you're having a hard time pronouncing my last name, I totally understand. I had a nice 5-letter last name that everybody could pronounce, and I was always on the computer, and it wasn't a pain signing checks. And then my husband did this to me. So it's taken me a while to get used to it, and I'm sure it'll take you a while as well. If you break it up in syllables, Babe, Chow, Vu, Ri, it's not so bad. My first name is a little easier to pronounce, Shuddata. It's spelled Sudata, but it's got an SH sound to it. We'll get better acquainted through the semester. Our History 101, the second half of world history, is a two-part sequence. The first part is History 100. If you've taken it, wonderful. Some of the concepts that we start out at the usual starting point, 1450, 1500, will seem very familiar to you. If you haven't taken History 100, I wouldn't worry about it, because these two are independent courses, even though it's sequentially arranged, 101 after 100. You can, if you're really interested, once you've taken 101, go back to History 100 if you feel that that's something that will serve more than the purpose of a requirement just for your general knowledge purposes. But just to reassure you, you don't really need to take the first half to take the second half, or understand the second half. All right. History 101 begins with the 1450-1500 period. 1450-1500 is the cutoff point for the end of the first half, where the second half begins. It sort of overlaps because this is a period when the world is shrinking. It's no longer just regional sections of the world which are in contact with one another, but it's become truly a global world, with the extensive amount of travel that's begun from the time of the Renaissance, Reformation, Age of Explorations period. And so 1500s is where we see lives being affected, where indigenous populations are encountering other visitors, traders, travelers, people who are migrating to different regions, coming up with administrative policies that affect their lives that have been led in a certain way for centuries are now being affected by the presence of outsiders. And when it becomes an integrated history of these regions, and when one region is integrated with another region, it becomes truly a global history where only the remotest parts of the world remain unconnected in the 19th century. And by the time you come to the 20th and the 21st century, even those remote areas are no longer remote. They are a part of an integrated world. And to the extent we can understand the histories of these lives in the 1600s and how they're affected by these new encounters, we will try and incorporate as many sources as possible. You've got the text. The text is Stern's World Civilizations, which is one of the most comprehensive texts I've found for the level that you are comfortable with. It's not talking to you like you are in junior high. It's not talking several miles ahead of you like you are already finishing up your doctoral work and you are about to do research on any of these subjects, but it is at the appropriate level. And it also incorporates primary and secondary sources. In fact, when it doesn't pay enough attention to primary sources, we have a second source for you, the human record, which is a compilation of excerpts from people's diaries, people who were present during the times that we're talking about. Some of the authors that you'd recognize are important figures. When you hear about the Russian Revolution, and you are bound to hear about people like Trotsky or Lenin, you'll see excerpts from their writings. When you hear about the French Revolution, you're going to look at a document that has a lot of similarity with the American Constitution. And with the Declaration of Rights, you will get a direct exposure into how the French were thinking about people's rights and property rights and civil rights. And so primary sources will be a part of your reading and your assignments as well. We'll try and look at a more comprehensive view of history, so not just political history, not history of statesmen and kings and queens and people at the highest level of administration, but how these policies affect lives of ordinary folk like you and me. And so we'll look at social history and cultural history, and we will not look at 50% of the population and exclude the other 50%. So yes, there will be a history of women and children incorporated, not in a little box as a separate segment for people to look at as though it was a museum piece, but incorporated into the general social cultural history of all regions and all parts of the world. And we will also take into account intellectual and religious history. And so ours will be a pretty complete picture. And so at the end of it, you will emerge as an expert on the world. And anything that anyone ever talks about, you will know because you've done world history from 1500 to the present. And if you have been able to do that in 16 weeks, well, you should really feel proud of yourselves. And I'm going to need a lot of help from all of you. Places that you have traveled to, places that you're familiar with, cultures that you've grown up with or are familiar with, languages that you know. You can find a tremendous amount of sources available, and they are at your fingertips. Please bring them to our attention. Films that you've seen, historical or otherwise, books that you've read, articles that you've come across, documentaries that you feel might be useful, pictures you've taken on your travels of historical sites that are relevant to our content and fall within the purview of our course. Again, 1500s to the present, the world's your oyster. You are welcome to share these resources with one another and with me. Music that you find from different regions, because music has a lot of bearing on history, and history, as a matter of fact, shapes a lot of the music that's produced. We cannot see one sort of separate from the other. They are really to be seen in conjunction with one another. We'll talk a little bit about that in certain specific periods of history, how, for example, freedom songs have inspired not just one country, but there are similar trends in freedom fighters' lyrics, or for that matter, how social protest has emerged through song and music, not just in the contemporary period, but also in several regions and periods of history. So when we talk about, say, cultures in close proximity with one another, geographical proximity with one another, like Turkey and Greece, and we talk about the kinds of instruments Greek revolutionaries, social and political, primarily the Rembetika movement, which had workers' rights incorporated in its program, how they were voicing their social discontent through certain instruments that they would avoid, or certain ethnic components of music that they would either emphasize or discard, and make a distinction between themselves and their Turkish neighbors. And Greek and Turkish history have been completely dovetailed into one another's political, social, and cultural history. So to the extent that music has shaped different parts of the world and how political and social developments have occurred, again, I'm going to need your help. I'm sure you're familiar with lots of different kinds of music that you would like to incorporate in the history class that we are jointly embarking on. Artwork, pictures of architectural monuments, historical sites that you've visited, like I said, anything that you feel will make it easier for your classmates to understand a particular topic, certain issues, certain concepts, you're welcome to bring to our attention. So let's embark on this journey together, and hopefully we'll have fun. It's not only going to be just about dead people. I know that's the usual concept people have of history, but we are going to talk more about how contemporary lives are affected by, yes, certain of these people are dead, but the way they live their lives might have a predictable quality to it and might actually lead us to analyzing how future, subsequent years and centuries were shaped. So I look forward to spending the next 16 weeks with you, learning a little bit about you, about how you think, and hopefully you'll find out a little bit about how I think about these issues. Thank you.